Okay, we're back. Wild Robot Escapes with Peter Brown. We're up to chapter 46. This is entitled The Spring. All right, so here we go. With each passing day, the sun climbed a little higher and the rays grew a little warmer. The last patches of snow melted away and color returned to the land. The pasture, the fields, the trees, they were all turning bright green, and the air slowly filled with fresh smells of spring. Many of the cows had been steadily growing bigger, and now calving season had arrived. When the time was right, each cow went out to the pasture so her calf could be born in soft grass. The robot stood nearby just in case anyone needed her help, but no one ever did. Even the first-time mothers knew what to do instinctively. And soon, newborn calves were frolicking around the farm. Spring was a happy, exciting time, and yet Roz was distracted. More and more she found herself looking to the skies, hoping to see Brightbill and his flock. She knew they were on their way. Chapter 47, The Dinner. Mr. Sharif hopped out of his truck with his arms full of shopping bags. He limped toward the farmhouse, dragging his leg in the usual way, and then he fell. Roz ran over and found the man sprawled in the driveway, groceries scattered around him. "Are you okay?" she said, pulling him to his feet. "I'm fine," he grumbled. Roz started picking up the groceries and said, "Let me help you inside." A minute later, the two of them were stepping into the house, jackets and hats hung from the pegs on the wall. Shoes were lined up beneath the bench. The man peeled off his boots and hollered, "Kids, it's time to cook dinner!" Footsteps pounded across the ceiling, and the children came flying down the staircase with their dog. "Is Roz having dinner with us?" said Jaya. "Roz doesn't eat," said Jad. "I know that, but she still could sit with us." "How about it, Roz?" said Mr. Sharif. "Care to join us for dinner?" The Roz stared at the family. The family smiled at the robot. "What would you like me to do?" said Roz. In a very proper voice, Jad said, I would greatly enjoy the pleasure of your company for dinner." In a very improper voice, Jaya said, "I order you to stay for dinner." The children didn't wait for a response. They snatched the groceries from Roz and scampered off. Oscar ran after them, barking, "Is that food? It smells like food. I want food." The wooden floor creaked as Roz followed Mr. Sharif through the living room. A comfy chair and a sofa faced a darkened electronic screen. Above the fireplace hung a painting of a familiar old barn. Doorways led to other rooms. Roz glanced into Mr. Sharif's office and saw a portrait of his family, including his wife. Mrs. Sharif was pretty, with dark curly hair and a bright smile. It was the same smile Roz saw in the children. "Look, Jaya's crying like a baby," said Jad's giggly voice from the kitchen. When Roz walked in, the girl was chopping an onion with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Roz, I ordered you to chop this onion for me," said Jaya, wiping her eyes. The Roz picked up a knife, and in a flash, the onion was perfectly chopped and dumped into a bowl. Clearly, Roz was designed to chop onions. "Roz, I ordered you to take the night off." Mr. Sharif laughed. "The other kids and I want to cook. We enjoy it." More vegetables were chopped, skillets started sizzling, delicious aromas swirled around, and before long a magnificent meal was set on the dinner table. Oscar positioned himself below to catch food scraps, and everyone else took a seat. Mr. Sharif turned to his daughter. "Would you like to say grace?" The daughter lowered her head. "Thank you, God, for this yummy food we're about to gobble down. Amen." "Thank you, Jaya," said Mr. Sharif with a wink. "And thank you, Roz, for everything you have done this past year. I had my doubts, but now I can't imagine what we'd do without you." The children looked at each other. Then the family grabbed their knives and forks and dug into dinner. A colorful, leafy salad, a plate of sautéed asparagus, creamy mashed potatoes and buttered bread, and tall glasses of milk. The meal was beautiful, but as Roz scanned the table, her eyes kept returning to the roasted chicken. It was about the size of Brightbill. Suddenly, the robot was full of questions. "Do chickens live happy lives? Did this chicken know it would be eaten? Were humans bad for eating animals? No," thought Roz, "humans are simply following their instincts, like all creatures, like Roz herself. At least that's At least the Sharifs honored this animal by giving it thanks and by turning it into a beautiful, nourishing meal. After he finished up eating, Mr. Sharif stepped out of the room and he returned a moment later carrying a violin and a bow. "Growing up, I dreamed of being a musician," he said, thumping back in his chair. He tuned the instrument, put it under his chin, and started to play. His bow glided back and forth, his fingers danced across the strings, and a lovely old folk song filled the room. Mr. Sharif tapped his foot and the notes rang out, soft and then loud, low and then fast, slow and then fast. The song ended with a flourish and the music faded to silence. Then he rested the violin on his knee. "This instrument has been in our family for a very long time," he said, "since the days when Cyrus Sharif first built the farm." Cyrus Sharif. Roz knew that name. She unsnapped a pocket on her tool belt and pulled out a small journal. "I discovered this in the old barn," she said, handing it over. The children huddled around their father as they looked at the journal. As he took the journal, they read their ancestor's name on the cover, and they carefully opened it and turned the brittle pages. "I've never seen this journal before," said Mr. Sharif. "It's a piece of our family's history. Kids, look how they used to milk cows." Roz left the Sharifs like that, examining the journal, learning about their family's history. But what about their family's future? Their lives were difficult. They needed help, and Roz was about to run away forever. As she marched back to the barn that night, the robot felt something like worry and confusion and guilt. Chapter 48, The Return. The robot's feelings of worry and confusion and guilt went away as soon as she heard her son's voice echoing across the farm. "Ma! We're back!" Brightbill's flock appeared above the pasture, flapping and honking and laughing. They glided down to Roz, and Brightbill took his place on his mother's shoulder. "I told you we'd keep your son out of trouble," squawked Loudwing. "Thank you, everyone," the robot spoke in her most cheerful voice. "It is so good to see all of you again." The cows trotted over, grinning and happily mooing to the geese. While the herd and the flock caught up with each other, Roz and Brightbill slipped away to speak privately. "What's the plan, Ma?" said Brightbill. "The plan is simple," said Roz. "Tonight, under the cover of darkness, I will run away from this farm, and then you and I will begin our journey home." Chapter 49, The Goodbyes. That evening was full of sad goodbyes. The first goodbye was between the flock and their young leader. The other geese wanted to help Roz and Brightbill get home, but the journey would be dangerous, and Brightbill refused to put his flock at risk. He demanded they return to the island without him. The geese could feel their instincts urging them onward, and they knew Roz and Brightbill would look after each other, so they said their goodbyes and took off into the night sky. The next goodbye was between the robot and the cows. Roz marched into the pasture one last time as the herd gathered around. "I guess this is it," said the robot. "Thank you for all of you being so kind to me." Annabelle sniffled and said, "Well, I greatly hate goodbyes, but I'm glad you're going home where you belong. I just wish there was some way I could be helpful." "Actually, there is something you can do," Roz unsnapped a pocket on her tool belt and took out the transmitter. "You can hold on to this for me. Hopefully it will take a few days for Mr. Sharif to realize I'm gone." Annabelle smiled as a robot gently tucked the small device into her collar. Lily and the other calves suddenly swarmed around Roz and nuzzled her legs. They all had tears in their eyes. Tess wanted to lighten the mood, but she couldn't think of anything funny to say. The other cows called out to their friend, "We'll miss you, Roz. Get home safely. Don't forget about us." Roz waved to the herd. She said a silent goodbye to all the farm machines parked in the shed. Then she followed the driveway out to the fields with Brightbill on her shoulder and the children at her side. The last goodbye was the hardest of all. Everyone was quiet as they walked through the silvery moonlight. Past rows and rows of sprouting crops, and out of the furthest corner in the farthest field, Roz turned and faced Jay and Jad. She looked past them, back to the distant lights of the farm buildings. "I have prepared the farm for my departure," said Roz. "It will take care of itself for a while, but not forever." "We can manage things, at least until we get another robot," said Jad. "This place won't be the same without you, but we'll be okay." What will you tell your father, said Roz. That's for us to worry about, said Jaya. You just worry about getting home. Roz glanced down at the tool belt strapped across her chest. Would you like this back? No, we would not, said Jab. It was a gift just for you, said Jaya. The girl pulled her brother and her robot into a big tight hug. Beneath the sounds of the crickets was the sound of the children crying. How will we ever know if you made it home, said Jad. We need to know how your story ends, said Jaya. The robot muttered some animal words to her son and then said to the children, If a goose ever visits this farm, and presents you with a feather, you know that I am home. The children smiled through their tears and waited for their friends to leave. But the robot didn't move. More than anything, Roz wanted to go home, and yet she was conflicted. She cared about this family and this farm, and now she was abandoning them. The robot lurched forward, then backward again and again, as her computer brain struggled with all these thoughts and feelings. Finally, the children gave her the gentle push she needed. Roz, we order you to run away. And the robot did as she was told. Chapter 50, The Free Robot. At long last, Roz was free. But as she ran away from Hilltop Farm, she didn't feel free. She felt something more like fear. She feared being seen and captured and destroyed. She feared for her son's safety. So Roz camouflaged herself and avoided the fields and kept to the trees. And with Brightbill at her side as her guide, she carefully crept north through farm country. The wild robot's long journey home had begun. And that takes us to Chapter 51, The Airship. We will continue that the next time. Thanks, everybody.